So my fibroid died inside of me. Yeah, like it died.
You will keep me moving if I'm patient. I just wanna get right to the racing. You love me so I could I be complacent. Not afraid of the battles I've been facing.
Hey girl, hey, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So my name is Eliane, and if you're new here, hey. If you are a subscriber already, hey. So for today's video, I am just going to be sharing with you guys my story. I suffered with a fibroid. I just had one, and I am aware that there are a lot of women who have multiple, and I feel your pain, I share your pain, but you know, this is Fibroid Awareness Month, July, and I know the month is coming to an end, so I really wanted to get this video out just to kind of talk about my history with it, and just how God moved in that area. So what is a fibroid? So some of you may not know this, but fibroids are basically non-cancerous growths that like make like little balls like within your uterus. Okay, there are different kind of fibroids. They can be located in different areas, and so yeah, they're painful. They can be pretty painful. Yeah, and they cause, you know, heavy bleeding, and they can just like, they can get to a point where it can really just diminish your living. Like you won't feel like you're living, like they can really just ruin your life. Okay, so I want to run you through like my history, and how I found out that I had one. So in 2018, also I have notes here, so if I'm looking down, that's what I'm looking at. So in 2018, that was the year I was taking the bar exam for the first time. And you know, I was super stressed out. So that's when I experienced my first really bad cycle. My cycles have always been on the heavier side and on the painful side, but this cycle that I felt in 2018, in July of 2018, I thought I was gonna die. Like I remember like studying for the bar exam with my friend Brandon. Hey Brandon. And I remember like, cause we studied for like 15 hours a day, right? Like I know, crazy. Anyway, but like he was always like at my apartment in the Sky Lounge thingy. And I would go up and I'd meet him there every morning, right? And I texted him and I was like, I think I'm done. Like it was so bad. Okay, and then on top of that, I started clotting. I never clotted before. Like my cycles, like I said, were heavy, but I never clotted. I started clotting in 2018. So I'm like, what is going on, right? You know, fast forward, I take the bar exam. I'm like, you know, still like tense. And so my sister was like, well, maybe your cycles are reacting to the stress, because that can happen, right? Like maybe you're just so stressed out that, you know, your cycle is just, everything is, so, you know, it'll calm down. Girl, it did not calm down, okay? So, you know, after the whole bar exam thing happened, I failed it. We know the story, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, I finally passed it in 2019, and my cycles were still bad. I was like, okay, the stress is over. Why am I still, what is this, right? And so I was just like, well, maybe like it's just gonna take time. Right. Fast forward to 2020. It's January 2020, and I am sitting at work, okay, and I feel lightheaded. So I'm like, I feel funny. My cycle has started on this day. My cycle started. So I'm like, I feel funny. Let me go to the restroom real quick. I get up, I go to the restroom. First of all, I'm like woozy. I can barely see. I'm like, oh, what's going on? I get to the restroom. I use the restroom. First of all, my pad, okay, drenched, soaked. I said, wow. Okay, let me switch pads. So, you know, I had my, good thing I put my purse with me to the restroom. I open my bag, I take out another pad, and like, you guys, I was leaking like a faucet. Like it would not, like I couldn't even like, you know what I mean? Like it was leaking. I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Like, I was just leaking, and I was like, okay, fine. So I get back to my desk and I sit down. I remember the lady sitting next to me at work. She was like, are you okay? You look flushed. Are you okay? And mind you, I'm a dark skinned girl. Like, I'm chocolate. I don't look like pale, and me don't go in the same sentence, right? So she's like, you look kind of pale. I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm okay. So that day I actually had an interview for another job, and I was wearing a dark blue, like a navy suit. So my pants were dark. So I'm sitting there and I'm getting ready to leave. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna leave now. And I get up and I feel wet. So I'm like, oh my God. Did I just, y'all, I bled through my pants. I was bleeding that much. Like the way the blood was just pouring out of me. I said, am I okay? Girl, I went to the restroom. I changed that pad. I still went to the interview though, period. Anyway, so that happened. That was my January cycle. Coming into February, I am in the shower, you know, washing my hair. I get a little lightheaded. I say, okay. And mind you, leading up to this, I had been having like these like dizzy spells. I get a little lightheaded and I catch myself. Like, I got used to it, right? I gotta sit down. And this has been happening to me for years, but like it really like cranked it up a notch in like 2019 and 2020. So like I'm in the shower, I'm washing my hair, and I'm like, oh God, I need to sit down. And so like I just remember opening the curtain. I took a step and I blacked out. I wake up on the floor, okay? I knocked the trash over. I think I hit my head on the wall, like on the way down. I hit my knee, I remember, because it was bruised. And I was calling for my sister, because at the time I lived with my sister. And she's a nurse, so she came into my room, she checked my blood pressure and stuff, and it was low. And she was like, okay. She was like, is your cycle coming? Because she knew it was heavy. And I was like, yes. And she was like, that's probably what it is, because you bleed so much. So, okay. I brush it off because I brush off everything, y'all. This is bad. And so then I told my like parents what happened, my dad as well. He's a doctor, and he was like, you need to go to the ER. You fell. You hit your head. You need to go to the ER. What are you doing? So I go to the ER and I tell them what happened, and I tell them like my symptoms, blah, blah, blah. They're like, okay. And they asked me about my cycles, and I was like, yeah, they're pretty heavy, blah, blah. Painful, yeah. And my cycle had started when I was there. And so, you know, they did, you know, stuff, blood work, and et cetera, et cetera. The guy comes back and he's like, oh, you know, the reason why you've been feeling the way you've been feeling is because you have a fibroid. Now, like, it's pretty big, like we can see it. And that's probably what's causing the heavy bleeding and the painful cycles, and that's why you know, you've been feeling so woozy, because you're actually anemic. He was like, so for a normal woman, your blood count should be at least a 12, right? And when he checked mine, it was at a 7.4 or something like that. And he was like, I mean, we can give you a blood transfusion, but you really don't need, you know, you could just, you know, eat like an iron infused diet and take iron supplements, and you should be okay. Like it'll get better. Child, it did not get better. Okay, but the anemia, that's another thing. Back to this fibroid. So they're like, okay, go see, you know, the OBGYN. Cool, whatever. I go, I set the appointments for the OBGYN, you know, and they explained to me, yes, you have a fibroid. The way your fibroid is, it's kind of like half showing, like halfway in the uterus, and the other half of it is like in your like tissue. So it's like half in, half out. So the procedure that they wanted to do for me, they were like, it's a myomectomy. We'll just go in and we'll carve the half that we can see, and then, you know, we'll let you rest, maybe give it a few weeks, and the other side's gonna push out, and once it pushes out, we'll carve the other side and you'll be good. It gave me super anxiety. I said, no, we're not doing it. I'm gonna go see another doctor. I went and saw another doctor, and you know, she was like, yes, she drew a picture for me. She was like, your fibroid, it's, you know, rather large, and this is where it's at, and this is how it's sitting, blah, blah, blah. She was like, yes, you can get the myomectomy, because I told her what the other doctor told me. She's like, yeah, you can get a myomectomy. I would suggest if you did that, please go to someone who specializes in that. But she was like, but honestly, like the scar tissue, you're so young, you haven't had children yet. I don't really think that you need that. Let's try to get the bleeding under control, right? Let's put you on birth control, some hormones. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll try it. No, negative. I was bleeding for like, what, 4 months straight? I said, and not like spotting a little cute, no, like a heavy full-on period for 4 months, clotting period, like painful. I was cramping for 4 months. Like it was, I was like, this, I said, I called her, I said, what, why? And she said, oh, your body needs to regulate and get used. I said, no, God forbid. I threw them pills away. I said, I'm not doing this. I'm not gonna keep taking something to make my body do something that God intended to do. Does that make sense? So I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm just gonna thug it out. That's what I always say. I'm gonna thug it out. I'm just gonna, you know, sit through my little 6-day, 7-day period. It's only like 3 out of the 7 days that's like horrible anyway. And I'm just gonna coast, right? And at the time I was working remotely, so I was like, that's fine. It's gonna be it's fine, right? Child, that was not the case. I was in and out the ER so much, they knew my name. Like, you guys, I don't even, let's fast forward to 2021. Still having the long periods, pain, going to the ER for pain, okay? For pain, because I started experiencing the secondary cramps, which is like cramps that you get after your cycle. So I would have the bad cycle and I wouldn't really cramp as much. Like it wasn't, but it wasn't that bad. But about May of 2021, that's when I started having the secondary cramps. So cramps after my cycle. And these cramps are cramps from hell. They hurt so bad. It's like, I can't even explain the type of pain. Like I woke up screaming. It was so bad. Okay, we went to the ER, I don't know how many times because of that feeling that I would get. And like I was like, what is this? Oh my God. Like I would go to the ER, they would run tests and like, oh, you have fibroid. I mean, fibroids are unpredictable. Like that's what they do, they cause pain. That was rude, sorry. That's what they do, they cause pain. I'm like, no, no, something is wrong. Why am I having these cramps? Like no one could give me an answer. So by mid 2021, I moved to another city. I'm kind of alone, so I'm like, okay, I'm by myself now, so I need to figure this out. Like I can't do this. So, you know, I start researching different like other things that you can do for fibroids, and I come across this procedure called the UFE. And I'll put the name here. And so basically what they do in the procedure is they go in through your vein and they cut off the circulation of the fibroid. And in return, it starts to shrink because it doesn't have its blood supply anymore, right? So I was like, oh, bet I'm gonna go look that up. So I book an appointment with this doctor and I go see her. So she schedules an MRI for me. So if you are, like if you have a fibroid and stuff, like the ultrasound is cool, but the MRI is what you really want to get, is because it shows you everything. Okay, so I get the MRI, my results come back, she calls me and she's like, so you have one fibroid like you said, you know, which is good, thank God, because sometimes, you know, they do this and they find that you have some people have multiple, like little ones that they don't even see because they didn't get the MRI. So you want to get the MRI. So she does the MRI and she calls me and she tells me, yes, you have one. And she explains to me the type that I have. So the type that I had is like similar to a hanging fruit. So your uterus, like it's like, you know, a triangle. And mine was like sitting at the top and it was like hanging this way, right? And she said it was at this time, it was taking up my entire uterus already. So I'm guessing it already like pushed out, like, you know, the other doctor said it completely. And now it was just sitting in my uterus, taking up the whole thing. It was squishing my bladder. She showed me the pictures as well. And it was squishing my bladder. And she also noted that my cervix was slightly open. And so she was like, so the way your fibroid is sitting and where it's at, the UFE might not be the best option for you. Because if we go in and we cut that, we cut the circulation off, it's gonna die, right? But it's not gonna shrink. Yours will drop. So I was like, oh. She's like, and if that happens, you're gonna have to deliver it, like have labor, like give birth to it. I said, oh, okay, so what's option number 2? And she was like, option number 2 is to get the myomectomy. I can refer you to a great doctor, blah, 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 blah. Okay, what's another option? The other option, she gave me 2 myomectomy options. So there was the robotic, which is where they go in and they cut 4 holes on your stomach, and they go in with like telescopes and they, right, and they suck the fibroid out. The other myomectomy is a hysteroscopic. I think I said that right. Where they going through your actual vagina and, you know, up your cervix, and they do it that way with a telescope. Another option she gave me was for them to go in and like blast it, kind of. And then of course the final last resort would be a hysterectomy. And God forbid that's not what I want, because I, you know, I want to have children. And so I sat with it and I sat with it and I sat with it. And this was like in December. And I was just like, okay, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. She's like, okay, fine. She was like, and I'll call you back with your lab results, because she also did lab work for me. She calls me back like the next day and she's like, where are you? And I was like, I'm in my car to go to work. And she was like, I need you to drive to the emergency room right now. And I was like, oh, why? What's wrong? She was like, your blood count is at a 6. How are you walking? I said, she's like, do you feel tired? And I was like, yeah, but I'm always tired. She was like, how you feel right now is not normal. You need to go to the doctor right now. She was like, this is now an emergency situation. You need to get a blood transfusion now. So I was like, okay. So I get the blood transfusion. And then I actually ended up going to Paris. So I was out of the country for the rest of the month of December. So fast forward to January of 2022. When everything goes down. My cycle in January was like the week of my birthday. And so the day of my actual birthday is when I experienced my secondary cramps. Now, like I told y'all, like they're really bad, right? I started getting used to it. And then on top of that, Dr. Slonim, she prescribed me some narcotics because I told her how bad it was, so it can help with the pain. So I had been managing with the narcotics. But mind you, it's a small bottle. It's not like it was a lot of pills, okay? But so January, my secondary cramps start on my birthday. I'm wailing in so much pain. I'm like, Jesus, make it stop. Not today. But thank God I'm working from home. Girl, that weekend of my birthday, the pain that I felt, the narcotics were not working. Nothing was. I was in so much pain. I went to the ER. I said, something is wrong. Like, I get pain, but you guys, I've been taking narcotics and nothing is helping. What is happening to me? I get the same answer. You have a fibroid. They're unpredictable. This is what happens. I'm like, no, something is wrong. I'm in so much pain. Like, it's bad. And they were like, it's fine. And so what's funny is Dr. Slonim, because I actually called her, even though I wasn't gonna get the UFE, she still was being a doctor to me. Like, she was heaven sent, you guys. Like, I don't even, anyway, I called her and I was like, what is happening? And she was like, the only thing I can think of is possibly that your fibroid is dying. But that, I mean, because the pain was like in waves. She was like, that's the only thing I can think of. And I was like, okay. Fast forward to end of January, because this was like second week of January, end of January. I start another cycle, and the bleeding. Remember when I told y'all I was leaking like a faucet at work in what year was that? 2020. This time it was worse. Like, I went that day, I went through, and I was wearing those jumbo pads. I went through like 10 pads in a matter of like 4 hours. I was like, okay, what? And mind you, I'm alone. So, you know, I called my sister and my parents, and my sister's like, you might be hemorrhaging. I need you to go to the ER now. And I went to the ER and I told them, yo, I know I have a fibroid. Please don't tell me I have a fibroid. Please, I know. Please, I know. Okay? But something is wrong. Okay? I'm hemorrhaging. I don't know what. So they run their test. I went to a different ER this time. They run their test and they're just like, you have fibroid. I'm like, I know, but something is wrong. Like, it was like, I'm like pulling my hair out. So that was that. So I was like, you know what, whatever. I already had booked an appointment with one of the OBGYNs that the UFE doctor told me about. And so I was like, fine, I'm just gonna, I already booked it. It was like for like mid-February. So that's fine. But then we had like a little snowstorm here in Texas. So my appointment actually got moved back to the end of February. That's fine. At least I had the appointment. Meanwhile, I am bleeding. I kept bleeding from that cycle that started at the end of January. I bled throughout February. I didn't stop bleeding. I bled the entire time. At one point, literally like the week before my appointments with the OBGYN, I started throwing up. I don't know why. I just started throwing up. My mom was here with me, thank God. But I got sick. I started throwing up. The pain, it was just so much. So finally I get to the OBGYN. Okay. I get to the OBGYN and, you know, she tells me about the procedure. I'm getting there. I'm thinking, we're about to schedule this thing for a few months out. She's going to give me something to help, I don't know, maintain it. I don't know, something, right? She's a specialist, right? So she does the pelvic exam. I lay back for her to do the pelvic exam. Andrew, I'm in pain because I'm still bleeding, child. I'm bleeding and it hurt. Okay, so she's like, wow, there's a lot of blood. And I'm like, yeah, girl, can you hurry up? And so she checks and she's like, are you pregnant? She's like, there's so much blood. Are you pregnant? And I was like, no. She's like, I'm only asking because, you know, possibly you miscarried. So, like, are you pregnant? And I was like, I'm not pregnant. Okay? I don't know what you're trying to get at, but I'm not pregnant. Help me. And so then she's like, wait a minute. She checks again and she's like, okay, your fibroid is now coming out of you. This is now an emergency situation. We are operating today. I said, huh? What? She's like, yes, your fibroid it's right here. It's literally here. Like, you can't walk around like this. We got to take this out now. And I was like, okay. She's like, the pain you've been feeling, you're in labor. We got to take this out. I said, oh, okay. You can come back in the morning. We'll set your appointment for in the morning, March 1st, in the morning, bright and early, get here. She was like, however, tonight, if you are at home and you start feeling that pain again, or if you get lightheaded, please come into the ER and let them know that you're my patient. I'm like, okay, fine. Next morning, of course, I go into surgery. And you know, everything goes well, thank God. And you know, I talked to the doctor after that, and she basically said, you know, your fibroid was very much dead. And when I took it out, it like smelled like that's how it was dead. And she said when I took it out, it was about the size of a small apple. And she said my cervix was 6 centimeters dilated when I went in. So she was very much confused as to how I was walking, how I was functioning. She was like, this doesn't happen. Like this is very rare. She said, but of course, you know, they checked it, it was non-cancerous. And also she also went in, it was, so I didn't get any kind of incisions on my stomach. She went in through the, you know, through the vagina opening, through the cervix to get it out, because it was already there. And then she said that she actually stitched my cervix together so she can go in through that, because the telescope is small. And so, yeah, so she can go into my uterus and clean out anything else that could have been left that could cause any type of pain after the fact. So yeah, so she was like, you know, you might feel a like pain from that, but like other than that, you should be okay. Just don't do any heavy lifting, blah, 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 you know, surgery stuff. Now, what happened to me does not usually happen. There is this thing that's called fibroid degeneration, when the fibroid dies and it shrinks and then you don't feel pain. Mine died, but stayed inside of me. That thing didn't shrink. It just stayed there floating around. Like, hey girl. So what happened to me is not common, and I recognize that. It was a very painful process. But it was all in God's hands. It was all God's work. It was all a miracle, to be honest. Like, I prayed, and because I did not want a myomectomy. I did not want the scar tissue. I just didn't want it. Like, it gave me anxiety to think about. I just didn't want that. I didn't want the procedure. I didn't want it. I kept asking God. I was like, God, make this thing die. Make it die. Make it die. Make it die. And it died. It did. It died. But then, you know, it died, and my body didn't recognize it anymore. And it was like, what is this? It gotta go. And so it started to push it out, and that's how I went into the whole labor thing and then everything. But I mean, I say this to say that God is God. Okay, that's it. It's just crazy what happened to me. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, I don't think y'all aren't. Are you grasping what I'm saying right now? Like, that was a miracle in itself. Crazy story. I know. Everything that happened to me, God was in it every step of the way, right? From them asking me, how are you functioning at a six level with your blood count? Like, how are you walking, driving, going to work, even going to the gym? Like, the doctors kept asking me, how? I'm like, child, let me tell you about Jesus, okay? Because I can't explain it. God was really with me. The fact that I was 6 centimeters dilated and I was able to walk into surgery. Like, I wasn't passed out somewhere. Like, it's a crazy story. I actually prayed to God for him to kill my fibroid, and he did. And like, God is God, and he does things his way, and I'm forever grateful, and I'm forever thankful for him to continue to use me as his vessel. And you know, so I did pray. I was like, God, I want you to use me, and you know, he doing it. You know, he doing it. I'm being he's using me. If you have really heavy cycles, like bad cramps, long cycles, please go get that checked out. Please, please, please. please don't just see any OBGYN either. Please see a fibroid specialist. There are different options that you can do. You don't have to get a myomectomy if you don't want to. I understand that my situation was very different, very unique, very much God. But you know, and I don't wish it on anybody. I really don't, because that was so painful. But to God be the glory. You don't have to live in pain. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to have your life revolve around your cycle and just be miserable. Trust me, I know. Trust me, it's not. Please get it checked out. If you are considering the myomectomy, because I technically had a myomectomy. It was an unusual one, but I had one. And I feel amazing. I feel amazing. Yeah, so that was my crazy story about how my fibroid died inside of me and how I had to have an emergency myomectomy while kind of in labor. Yeah, so if you resonated with the story, if you have a fibroid, you have a crazy fibroid story, comment that down below. Let's encourage each other. Let's, you know, help each other. And I pray it gets better for you. So thank you guys for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and like this video, just to push it out so more people can see it, because at the end of the day, this is a testimony. And so yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.